financial analyst has called for Disney to pull Marvel and Star Wars programs from Disney Plus after Ahsoka's premiere numbers show significantly declining viewership. Let's get into this here. If you haven't been paying attention to the Ahsoka viewership numbers, Nielsen recently released their viewership numbers for Ahsoka, revealing the series' 2-episode premiere only garnered 829 million minutes. You can see right there, it was good 4/5 for the week of August 21 to 27 in the Nielsen overall category. In reaction to these numbers, Valliant Renegade wrote on X, Ahsoka's viewership for the premiere measured lower than that of Book of Boba Fett when adjusted for runtime. That's awful. Disney Plus has added millions of subs since then. None of them are signing up for Star Wars or Marvel. It's time for Disney to pull the plug on those franchises on Disney Plus because the cost-benefit ratio is way out of whack. They're spending too much money to produce mediocre crap at best that nowhere near enough people are watching to justify these obscene costs. So I do want to just kind of jump over here real quick. We're looking at the Andor production costs. We have a report from comicbook.com says that each episode of Andor costs between $15 million and $25 million. I would say that's probably around what Ahsoka and The Mandalorian and all these other Star Wars productions have cost. We have Katie Sackhoff actually on record saying that the catering budget for The Mandalorian was more expensive than the entire show of Battlestar Galactica. So we do know that they are spending absolutely insane amounts of money for these productions. If the catering budget is more than the actual Battlestar Galactica show. So that does show you like how expensive these movies are, or I guess television shows are on Disney Plus. But we can also look at whether or not they're actually driving subscribers a little bit here too. I think we can kind of speculate on this based on some runtime calculations, right? So if you do a basic runtime calculation, simply divide the total minutes viewed as reported by Nielsen by the runtime of the 2 episodes, 101 minutes. It comes out to 8.2 million. Remember, there were 2 episodes for Ahsoka released on its premiere day. As Valliant Renegade points out, this is indeed less than the Book of Boba Fett premiere. That show premiered only 1 episode in its first week and clocked in at 389 million minutes, according to Nielsen. Doing the same calculation of viewership clocks in at 9.725 million, given the show's premiere runtime was 40 minutes. And then we have to look at subscription numbers, right? So the Walt Disney Company reported in their first quarter earnings report for fiscal 2022 that Disney Plus had 42.9 million subscribers in the United States and Canada. As of January 1, 2022, the Book of Boba Fett premiered on Disney Plus on December 29, 2021. So I think we know how many kind of subscribers they had in the United States when Book of Boba Fett premiered. It's pretty close right there, right? December 29, January 1, 2022. The company's most recent quarterly report reveals Disney Plus subscriptions in the United States and Canada have increased to 46 million as of July 1, 2023. So there's clearly some validity to the claim that the nearly 3 million people who subscribe to Disney Plus are not doing so due to Star Wars. Because if you do that runtime calculation, Book of Boba Fett actually clocked in with more seemingly more viewers, 9.725 million, compared to the 8.2 million for the 2-episode premiere of Ahsoka. So as for Marvel, Valliant Renegade did not make any comments about the recently released Secret Invasion, but the series premiered on the Nielsen charts with 461 million minutes viewed. Using the same runtime calculation, it comes out to 8.3 million. Looking at a similar comparison to the Book of Boba Fett, Hawkeye released its first 2 episodes on November 24, 2021, and Nielsen reported they racked up 853 million minutes. Using the runtime calculation, it comes to 8.2 million, so a little bit lower, 100,000 lower, but I think a similar conclusion can still be drawn, even though it's only 100,000 lower. The nearly 3 million new subscribers between the end of 2021 and today that Disney Plus has added in North America are not subscribing for Star Wars and Marvel programs. You would have expected that Secret Invasion number to actually increase a lot more if they were actually subscribing for Secret Invasion for those Marvel shows compared to that 8.2 million with Hawkeye. The Walt Disney Company does seem to recognize this, at least when it comes to Marvel. Needham financial analyst Laura Martin attended a 120-person investor event at Walt Disney World and reported that the company's CEO Bob Iger confirmed the company will, quote, lower output by Marvel Studios and lower the cost per unit. So they are indeed going to be cutting back on Disney Plus programming when it comes to Marvel. We even had these comments from Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige back in February. This is what he told Entertainment Weekly. He says, we want Marvel Studios and the MCU projects to really stand out and stand above. So people will see that as we get further into phase 5 and 6, the pace at which we're putting out the Disney Plus shows will change so they can each get a chance to shine. He was then asked if he would be spacing them out or putting out fewer shows per year, and he responded both, I think. So that's very clear that they are going to be cutting back on the number of programs that they're putting out on Disney Plus, as well as how often they're putting them out there. Later in the interview, he also said this. He said, I think when we are doing about 8 projects a year, and again, I said this is going to shift a little bit, they all have to be different. They all have to stand apart and stand alone and be different from one another. Iger also admitted, the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, also admitted back in May during the company's Q2 fiscal year 23 earnings results webcast. He says, as we grow the business in terms of the global footprint, we realize that we made a lot of content that is not necessarily driving sub growth, and we're getting much more surgical about what it is we make. So as we look to reduce content spend, we're looking to reduce it in a way that should not have any impact at all on subs. We believe there's an opportunity for us to focus more on real sub drivers. So seemingly the Walt Disney Company also recognizes that there's a bunch of content that they've made that actually wasn't driving subscriber growth. So they are looking at this. Whether or not that they recognize this as Marvel or Star Wars is another question, but he went on to detail that many of the programs they created were actually negatively impacting the company's financials due to their marketing costs outweighing the subscription revenue. One would think that this would also probably apply to production costs when you're looking at 15 to 20 million per episode for Andor, and it's obviously not driving any subscription growth. And clearly, Ahsoka, it wasn't driving any sub growth either. When you're doing that, it's having less viewership than the Book of Boba Fett premiere. And one interesting example I should throw marketing into, where when you make a lot of content, everything needs to be marketed. You're spending a lot of money marketing things that are not going to have an impact on the bottom, except negatively due to the marketing costs there. One thing we also know is that our films, those that are released theatrically, big tentpole movies in particular, are great sub-drivers, but we were spreading our marketing costs so thin that we were not allocating enough money to even market them when they came on the service. So he's actually admitting that their theatrical films are the ones that are driving subscriptions, but they weren't actually being able to market them because they were putting that money elsewhere on content that wasn't actually driving subscription growth. He then admitted that a number of programs were not driving any subscriptions at all. He said, as witnessed by the ones that are coming up, including Avatar, Little Mermaid, Guardians of the Galaxy, Indiana Jones, Elemental, where we actually believe we have an opportunity to lean into those more, put the right marketing dollars against it, allocate more away from programming that was not driving any subs at all. I guess this is the part of the maturation process as we grow into a business that we had never been in. We are learning a lot more about it. Specifically, we are learning a lot more about how our content behaves on the service and what it is consumers want. The company would later, quote, record a $1.5 billion impairment charge in its fiscal third quarter financial statements to adjust the carrying value of these content assets to fair value. So they basically, if you're wondering what an impairment charge is, Indeed defines it as a cost that shows a reduction in the carrying value of a specific asset on a balance sheet. This occurs when an asset's book value exceeds its fair value in the market, according to the generally accepted accounting principles. Basically, in layman's terms, they made a bunch of content that's pretty much, they're now saying is basically worth nothing or worth significantly less than what it was, to the tune of $1.5 billion. So one would think that we obviously saw Willow was part of that with Lucasfilm. I would wager that some of the Star Wars and Marvel stuff is in there too. Obviously, I don't think they've taken that impairment charge for that yet because all that stuff is still up on Disney Plus. But one has to wager that the production costs, the marketing costs of a lot of those Disney Plus, Star Wars, and Marvel shows is significantly racking up the costs for Disney Plus and is not actually driving subscribers to the program or to the streaming service. However, one thing that could change is they are trying to monetize those people that they already have subscribed. One would think that that clearly is one of their most viewed shows on Disney Plus, especially with the Nielsen there, top 5 on Nielsen. So they're trying to get the subscribers to switch over to their ad-supported package and then be able to not only get the subscription revenue from them, but also get the lucrative ad revenue that they get when they put in ads and stuff from their partners. So there is a way that they're maybe trying to make up for that because it is at least seemingly one of the more watched shows on Disney Plus, although it still didn't perform better than Bluey. It did worse than Bluey, at least in North America. If you recall, Lucasfilm, StarWars.com actually reported that it was the most streamed show globally with 14 million. Clearly, that is not reflective of North America alone, though. North America was watching Bluey more so than Ahsoka. But what do you make of this call to basically remove Star Wars and Marvel shows from Disney Plus, because it isn't driving subscription growth, isn't actually generating any revenue. You aren't getting any kind of return on interest, and seemingly the production costs and marketing costs are just absolutely exorbitant, really weighing down any kind of revenue that you might actually be generating from people subscribing. But again, we aren't really seeing any kind of subscription growth, so your reliance there is on ad revenue, and you really kind of just rolled that out, and it's still not where you probably want it to be, and you're not really recovering anything from those production costs, so you're probably getting negative return on investment on these shows. So I do think Valliant Renegade has some good validity to make this call, and it does look like it is a absolutely horrible financial practice for Disney to keep doing this and keep putting out these shows that cost so much money and aren't actually affecting the bottom line in a positive fashion.
Subscribe for more.